Fire her! Fire that black maid immediately! Harrison hissed into the tiny lapel mic, his voice sharp with panic as his eyes flicked toward the approaching figure of the Chinese billionaire in the lobby of the Wellington Palace Hotel. She cannot be anywhere near this meeting. The polished marble floor gleamed beneath the grand chandelier, each crystal scattering light like sparks across the lavish hall. Harrison, the general manager, tugged at his perfectly knotted tie and forced the kind of smile he had practiced for decades, one meant to mask fear with charm. He was determined to look confident as he prepared to greet the man who could decide not only the hotel's future, but his own. Mr. Zhang, head of a global investment empire controlling billions of dollars in luxury hospitality assets, entered with 6 impeccably dressed associates trailing behind him. Their presence alone altered the room's atmosphere, filling it with pressure and expectation. "Welcome to the Wellington," Harrison said, extending his hand with rehearsed warmth. But Zhang ignored the English greeting and instead unleashed a rapid stream of Mandarin. The sharp cadence of his words hit like a blade, leaving Harrison frozen, his smile stiffening as panic overtook him. Fumbling desperately, Harrison pulled out his smartphone and opened the translation app. His hands trembled. The robotic voice that emerged mangled the Mandarin so poorly that Zhang visibly winced. Harrison's face flushed as cold sweat dampened his collar. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Zhang," he stammered, "but unfortunately, none of our staff speak Mandarin." The words fell into the silence like a death sentence. The grand lobby froze. Zhang's entourage exchanged cold, knowing glances, their disappointment unmistakable. Zhang's expression hardened. His hand gripped the leather briefcase rumored to hold contracts worth millions. Behind the tense gathering, a black woman in a gray housekeeping uniform quietly pushed her cleaning cart past. She was the same maid Harrison had just ordered out of sight. Her eyes flickered toward the billionaire, just for an instant, before she looked away, her face unreadable. No one noticed her presence. No one saw the Harvard diploma and the Beijing University master's degree hanging on the wall of her modest apartment. And no one could have imagined that, within only a few hours, this woman would alter everything. 3 hours earlier, the Wellington Palace had been in chaos. The 5-star hotel, famous for hosting world leaders and international celebrities, was preparing for perhaps the most important guest in its history. "Mr. Zhang arrives precisely at 2 o'clock, Harrison announced during an emergency staff meeting, pacing the employee break room with military precision. His voice cut through the air like an order from a commander before battle. His investment group owns over 30 luxury properties across the globe, and he is considering adding the Wellington to his portfolio. This could mean international expansion for all of us." His words stirred a current of hope among the department heads. The executive chef outlined the authentic Chinese delicacies he had prepared. The maintenance supervisor confirmed that the presidential suite had been adjusted to exactly 72 degrees, as Zhang's assistant had demanded. The concierge proudly explained the VIP arrangements, exclusive access to the city's finest venues. Harrison lowered his voice, his eyes narrowing as he swept across the room. "Mr. Zhang's net worth surpasses the GDP of several small nations. One mistake, and we lose everything." A front desk manager cautiously raised her hand. "Sir, I've heard Mr. Zhang prefers to conduct business in Mandarin. Should we secure a translator?" Harrison dismissed the suggestion with a wave. His assistant assured me he speaks fluent English. And besides, he held up his phone as though it were a shield. "We've updated our devices with the latest translation software, practically human." As the meeting ended, Harrison called over the head of housekeeping. "Emma, make sure your staff is invisible today. I want the room spotless as if cleaned by magic, but no guest should see it happening." Emma nodded. "Of course, sir. They know the drill." And then the hotel transformed. Fresh flowers were arranged in every corner. Employees rehearsed their smiles until they shone like polished silver. Security discreetly swept every hallway and entrance. The Wellington was no longer just a hotel. It had become a stage, and each staff member an actor in a grand performance of perfection. At its center stood Harrison, orchestrating every detail, adjusting the volume of the lobby's music, repositioning the welcome banner by a single inch, ensuring the scent of lilies drifted just enough to feel intentional but not overpowering, For 20 years, Harrison had climbed from front desk clerk to general manager, believing success was built on absolute control of every detail. Today's meeting was not only about the hotel's future, it was about his own. The regional director had hinted that landing this deal could mean a promotion to the corporate office, the dream of his career. Harrison checked his watch. 1 hour until Zhang's arrival. He straightened a slightly crooked painting and allowed himself a rare smile. Everything was perfect. Everything was under control. In the East Wing's executive suite, Olivia Thomas moved methodically, her motions smooth and efficient. At 32, she had worked housekeeping for nearly 4 years, her labor invisible in a world of visible luxury. She replaced the Egyptian cotton sheets with military precision, aligning the embroidered pillows until they looked mathematically exact. From her cart, she selected the requested aromatherapy diffuser, white tea and jasmine, imported from Fujian province. Proper diffusion requires placement away from direct sunlight, she murmured in flawless Mandarin, adjusting its position carefully. Beside her cleaning supplies lay a dog-eared book on international trade theory and a well-worn Mandarin English dictionary, evidence of a life far larger than the uniform suggested. The walkie-talkie at her hip crackled. All housekeeping staff must finish within 50 minutes and remain in service areas. VIP arrival is imminent, Emma's voice instructed. Understood, Olivia responded, picking up her pace. As she polished the bathroom's gleaming fixtures, her reflection fragmented across the mosaic of mirrors. Bachelor's degree in international relations, master's in East Asian linguistics, fluent in Mandarin, proficient in Cantonese and Japanese. Yet here she was, pushing a housekeeping cart down the gilded halls of America's luxury hotels. 4 years earlier, she had returned from Beijing with ambitions of working in international business. 300 rejection letters later, crushed beneath student loan debt, she had taken a temporary job at the Wellington. Temporary had turned into years. Each day she silently corrected mistranslations in her mind while emptying trash cans. $1 million deals unfolded before her eyes, while she earned minimum wage and tips. The irony never escaped her. In a globalized world desperate for cultural bridges, her skills remained hidden beneath a gray uniform that rendered her invisible. Finishing the presidential suite, Olivia glanced at her watch. Enough time remained to skim through the Chinese economics journal tucked into her bag. But her phone buzzed first, a debt collector's automated reminder. Payment overdue. She sighed, tucked the journal away, and pushed her cart onward. Another day, another room, another chance to practice skills no one else knew she had. In the hallway, executives hurried past without even looking at her. She was just a shadow among the important. At precisely 2 o'clock, a fleet of sleek black Mercedes SUVs rolled into the hotel's circular drive. Security officers leapt into formation, scanning the scene with military sharpness. Harrison stood at the entrance with his team of department heads, all of them armed with their most polished smiles. And then Mr. Zhang appeared. The atmosphere seemed to crackle with static. Though in his 60s, he moved with the vigor and confidence of someone much younger. His charcoal gray tailored suit framed his posture with authority, the crimson tie at his collar flashing like a banner of power. Behind him, 6 associates carried identical leather briefcases. "Welcome to the Wellington Palace Hotel, Mr. Zhang," Harrison said, stepping forward, hand extended. "We are honored to have you." Zhang gave only a slight nod, his handshake brief and perfunctory, before turning to speak rapidly in Mandarin to his associates. The language flowed through the lobby like a song. Foreign to most ears. Harrison's smile remained, but panic flickered in his eyes. This was not small talk. A young female associate with sharp eyes noticed his unease and, after a pause, switched to hesitant English. "Mr. Zhang is speaking about his first impressions. He says he appreciates the architecture here." Harrison's expression lit with relief. "Wonderful. Please tell him we have prepared the presidential suite exactly as requested, and our chef has designed a special menu with Chinese cuisine." The entourage moved toward the elevators, staff discreetly stepping in to handle luggage. From a quiet corner, Olivia pushed her cart, her ears catching every word of Mandarin. And the phrase that Harrison had just celebrated as praise was, in truth, "The decor is acceptable. but I fear they don't truly understand our needs." An hour later, Harrison guided the group through the hotel's crown jewels. They toured the spa with its imported Japanese soaking tubs, the Michelin-starred restaurant where the chef displayed his signature appetizer, and the grand ballroom, where Harrison delivered a glowing speech about international conference capabilities. But throughout the tour, Zhang rarely spoke in English. His conversations with his team remained almost entirely in Mandarin. His assistant, a woman introduced as Ms. Lin, occasionally translated a few phrases, but Harrison knew he was missing the heart of every discussion. Zhang's expression revealed nothing. Questions filtered through layers of translation until their meaning was faint, colorless. And as they finally entered the high-level meeting room, where the official presentation was to begin, Harrison felt a bead of sweat slide down his collar. He understood one thing with devastating clarity. A single mistake now would not just ruin the meeting, it would destroy everything. The boardroom on the top floor had been transformed into a fortress of elegance. Crystal water pitchers gleamed on the mahogany table, each place set with gold-embossed folders bearing the Wellington crest. Harrison stood at the head, rehearsing his lines one last time in his mind. Warm welcome, cultural appreciation, business proposal. He straightened his tie, glanced at the digital screen that displayed the Wellington's international expansion map, and forced himself to breathe evenly. The doors opened. Zhang entered first, his entourage close behind, their expressions unreadable. They settled into seats with the quiet authority of people used to signing contracts worth more than entire companies. Harrison began with his polished speech, each word carefully crafted to impress. Market growth, global reputation, return on investment. But as he spoke, Zhang's eyes remained cool, his gaze occasionally drifting to his associates as he whispered in Mandarin. Laughter rose once, curt and sharp. Harrison's stomach clenched. Were they mocking him? The translator app on his phone sat ready, but he dared not use it again after the embarrassment in the lobby. Instead, he pressed forward, his words sliding off the air like water on stone. Zhang gave no nod, no acknowledgement, just silence thick enough to drown in. And then, it happened. From the back of the room, a quiet knock sounded. Olivia, still in her gray housekeeping uniform, stood holding a tray of tea service. Her posture was respectful, her eyes lowered, the image of a staff member performing her invisible role. Harrison's jaw tightened. This was exactly what he had ordered against. No staff should appear, no distraction should break the illusion. He prepared to dismiss her sharply. But before he could, Zhang turned. His expression shifted, not with annoyance, but with curiosity. Olivia bowed slightly. Then, in flawless Mandarin, she said, "Mr. Zhang, would you prefer Longjing green tea or pu'er? Both have been prepared fresh, according to your customs." The room froze. Zhang's associates glanced at one another, startled. Zhang himself sat back in his chair, his eyes narrowing in surprise. For the first time since arriving, a flicker of genuine interest softened his face. Slowly, almost ceremonially, he replied in Mandarin, "Longjing. Very few outside of Hangzhou know its true preparation." Olivia smiled faintly, pouring the pale golden liquid into delicate porcelain cups. Her tone carried the ease of someone who had lived the culture, not studied it from afar. "The leaves must be pressed gently against the pan, never burned. Otherwise, the fragrance is lost," she explained softly, her every word a bridge across the gulf that Harrison had failed to cross. Whispers filled the room. Zhang's chief associate leaned forward, murmuring in Mandarin, "Who is this woman?" Zhang's eyes, still fixed on Olivia, carried both curiosity and respect. "Not who we expected," he replied. Harrison's face blanched. His carefully rehearsed script, his 2 decades of control, all of it collapsed in seconds as the maid he had dismissed as invisible became the center of the room. The irony was brutal. The very presence he had tried to erase was the only thing holding the meeting together. As the conversation shifted, Olivia placed the final cup on the table and, before stepping back, answered a question Zhang had just whispered to his aide, a technical term in international hospitality law, spoken in Mandarin so specific it silenced even his entourage. She explained it with clarity, citing trade agreements and cultural precedents from Beijing and Shanghai. Zhang's eyes lit with recognition. This was not mere fluency. This was expertise. The sine wave had hit its unexpected upswing. The maid was no maid at all. Zhang leaned back, swirling the porcelain cup in his hand. The aroma of Longjing tea rose between them, delicate yet commanding. He spoke again in Mandarin, this time not to his aides, but directly to Olivia. You know the law of reciprocity in Chinese trade contracts? Without hesitation, Olivia answered, her voice calm but firm. She cited the principles of Guanxi, the intricate web of trust, obligation, and cultural nuance that no app or translation service could ever capture. She spoke of how agreements in China were not sealed only with signatures, but with relationships, rituals, and an understanding of respect. A murmur ran through the entourage. One associate, clearly astonished, whispered, "She speaks not just the language, but the heart of it." Harrison's palms grew damp. He felt like the floor beneath him had tilted, his authority sliding away with every word Olivia spoke. For 20 years, he had believed control meant polish, perfection, rehearsed smiles. And yet here, in the center of his carefully staged performance, an unseen player had stolen the spotlight. Zhang placed the cup down gently, his eyes never leaving Olivia. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair beside him. The room gasped. Housekeepers did not sit in boardrooms, not at mahogany tables, not beside billionaires. Harrison opened his mouth to protest, but Zhang's raised hand silenced him like a gavel. Olivia hesitated only a moment before taking the seat. She smoothed her gray uniform, lifting her chin slightly, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself not to shrink, not to disappear. Jiang's voice lowered, but its weight filled the room. "Your name?" "Olivia Thomas," she replied in fluent Mandarin, then added in English, "Harvard, class of 2014, master's degree in East Asian linguistics, Peking University. I came here chasing opportunities, but life doesn't always follow the script we expect." The silence was thunderous. Harrison felt his throat tighten. His perfectly crafted empire of appearances had crumbled with a single revelation. Zhang leaned forward, a rare smile tugging at his lips. Finally, someone who understands. Someone who sees the bridge between cultures, not just the profits. He turned slowly to Harrison, whose face had drained of all color. "You prepared the food, the rooms, the show, but you did not prepare to understand me." The billionaire's entourage nodded subtly, their eyes now fixed on Olivia as if she were the true key to the negotiation. For the first time, Olivia felt it. The shift. The invisible maid was no longer invisible. She had become the fulcrum on which the entire deal balanced, and Harrison knew, with a sick weight in his chest, that the meeting no longer belonged to him. The sine wave had swung hard. The underdog, once silenced, had seized the room. Zhang's eyes gleamed with interest, the way a chess master regards an unexpected move from an underestimated opponent. He turned his chair slightly, angling away from Harrison, as though the general manager no longer existed. "Tell me, Ms. Thomas," Zhang said in Mandarin, his tone measured but probing, "if you were in my position, would you invest billions in a chain that greets me with machine voices and empty gestures? Or would you demand more?" Olivia felt the heat of every gaze in the room pressing on her, but she kept her breathing steady. "Respect is not shown through chandeliers or Michelin stars," she replied in flawless Mandarin. "It is shown by listening, by understanding, by speaking the language of your guest, not only with words, but with action." Zhang's lips curved upward. "Exactly." He pivoted back toward Harrison. "Do you see now? You polish marble floors and train smiles, but left your house deaf to the very people you wanted to welcome." Harrison swallowed hard. For the first time in his career, words failed him. Zhang leaned back, clasping his hands. "Ms. Thomas, I have reviewed hundreds of hotels across 3 continents. Rarely have I met someone who bridges east and west so seamlessly. Tell me," his voice softened but carried authority, "why are you pushing a cleaning cart instead of sitting at a negotiating table?" Olivia hesitated, the truth, raw and unvarnished, pressed at her lips. "Because the world does not always see past uniforms and skin," she admitted quietly. Doors closed, opportunities vanished, and so I adapted. I worked where I could. The billionaire's entourage exchanged glances, some visibly moved. One whispered, This is what true resilience looks like." Zhang tapped the polished table with 2 fingers, decisively. "Then allow me to open a door for you." He turned to his aides. "Draft an agreement. Wellington will join our portfolio, but with one condition." Harrison's head snapped up, desperate. "Yes, anything, sir." Zhang's gaze sliced through him. "From this day forward, I do not negotiate with men who hide behind apps. I will speak with Ms. Thomas. She is the bridge. She is the reason I will consider this deal." The words struck like a gavel. Harrison staggered back, his perfect world collapsing in slow motion. 20 years of control, undone in 20 minutes. Meanwhile, Olivia sat frozen, her hands trembling beneath the table. She had not asked for this stage, but it had found her. And in the silence that followed, a truth shone brighter than the chandeliers above. The invisible maid had become the voice that could redefine not just a meeting, but an empire. The room seemed to hold its breath. Pens hovered over notepads, eyes locked on the unexpected heroine at the center of the storm. Zhang's lead aide slid a leather folder across the table. Contracts gleamed inside, their gold-embossed pages carrying the weight of fortunes. "Sir," she said in careful English, "if you approve, this agreement secures Wellington under Zhang Global." Zhang did not touch the pen. Instead, he turned once more to Olivia. "You understand the nuances of culture, Ms. Thomas. You see beyond surfaces. Will you advise me, here, now, on whether this partnership is worth my signature?" The question stole the air from Harrison's lungs. It was the question he had dreamed of answering his entire career, and it had been given to a woman he had once ordered out of sight. Olivia's pulse thundered, but her voice was steady. "The building is beautiful, the service is polished, but beauty without understanding is fragile. If Wellington wants to stand among the world's greatest, it must treat cultural fluency as seriously as crystal and linen. If you sign, do so with the condition that this hotel learns to listen." For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, slowly, Jiang's face softened. He picked up the pen. With a flourish, he signed. Gasps rippled through the room. Harrison's knees nearly buckled. The deal he thought he controlled had been decided not by his rehearsed speeches, but by the voice of the woman he dismissed as invisible. Zhang rose to his feet, adjusting his crimson tie. "Congratulations, Ms. Thomas," he said in perfect English at last. "You are no longer staff. You are my cultural liaison for all North American ventures, effective immediately." Olivia blinked, as though the words were a dream she might wake from. Around her, the billionaire's entourage nodded with approval. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her degrees, her languages, her sacrifices, not as hidden relics, but as wings unfurling. Behind her, Harrison stood motionless, a man shattered by the irony of his own arrogance. In the glittering hall he once commanded, he was now a ghost. As the entourage departed toward the waiting motorcade, Zhang leaned in just close enough for Olivia to hear. "Invisible people," he murmured, "often see the clearest. Don't ever forget that." The crystal chandelier above blazed like a sunrise. Olivia pushed the cleaning cart aside, no longer chained to its wheels. She walked out not as a maid, but as the voice of a new chapter, proof that even in the grandest palaces, it is often the overlooked who carry the keys to destiny. Zhang nodded, his eyes lighting up. These are exactly the kinds of subtle details most Western corporations overlook, and that is why I am so often disappointed. His associates scribbled furiously as Olivia continued, even comparing Wellington's operations with rival hotels she had studied. The meeting stretched close to an hour, and Harrison's meticulously prepared presentation remained untouched on the screen. Instead, Olivia had created a living, breathing dialogue that addressed the investors' real concerns. When Zhang raised questions about regulatory compliance troubles at his other properties, Olivia proposed a creative solution that harmonized both American and Chinese requirements. Her advice was so practical that Zhang immediately instructed his team to record it in detail. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking international deals need," he praised. Then he turned directly to Harrison. "Where did your hotel find her?" Harrison jumped in hastily. "Ms. Thomas is a new member of our International Relations Department." The lie hung in the air, flimsy, betrayed by the housekeeping uniform Olivia still wore. As the discussion wrapped up, Zhang turned to Harrison with respect in his tone for the first time. "Your hotel has great potential, but it was Ms. Thomas who showed me that potential." His gaze sharpened. "For someone of her caliber to be working in housekeeping, that is a serious waste. In my company, we have systems to identify talent so that no one slips through the cracks." The words landed like a blade, slicing deep into the polished image Harrison had crafted over 20 years. Never had he felt so small. "Ms. Thomas," Harrison said at last, his voice sincere now, "I believe we owe you an apology and a serious conversation about your future here at Wellington." As the meeting adjourned, Zhang stepped forward and handed Olivia a sleek black card edged in gold, not the same ones he had given others. Presenting it with both hands in the proper custom, he said in fluent Mandarin, "My personal contact. If you are interested, I will personally review your application." Olivia bowed slightly, accepting it with both hands. "Thank you, sir. That would be an extraordinary honor." Harrison, watching without fully grasping the exchange, still recognized the weight of the moment. His voice trembled. "Ms. Thomas, after this, we need to talk immediately." 1 month later, the elevator doors opened, and Olivia stepped out in a tailored charcoal gray suit and modest heels. The nameplate on her chest no longer read housekeeping. It now read Director of International Guest Relations. In her new office, her Beijing master's degree hung proudly on the wall beside the official letter confirming Wellington's entry into Zhang International's portfolio. The new salary allowed her to begin chipping away at her student debt. But more than that, it was the first time in years she was living in her true capacity. Olivia wasted no time. She launched a program called Hidden Talent, gathering 30 employees from every department. On the screen in the conference room, the slogan appeared, "Recognizing the whole person behind every position." "Just 1 month ago, I was pushing a housekeeping cart down this hallway," Olivia told them. "Today, I'm here to open doors for those of you who have been overlooked. We are not just cleaners, cooks, or front desk clerks. Each of us carries a value far beyond the uniform we wear." Harrison stood quietly at the back of the room, nodding. In only weeks, Olivia had identified 17 employees with extraordinary skills, from languages and technology to market research. Some had already been promoted, others given stipends, but all of them shared something they had never felt before, the dignity of being seen. That afternoon, Olivia welcomed a delegation from Shanghai. Her Mandarin flowed with calm authority. As the guests stepped into the elevator, she caught the eye of a young technician, a boy who had once confided that he was a mechanical engineering student. Between them flickered a spark of recognition. Both knew what it felt like to be hidden behind a uniform. The true worth of a human being, like a rare gem, does not vanish just because it is overlooked. It simply waits for the moment when someone finally chooses to see it. And so, what about your workplace, your community, even your own family? Who among them might be invisible? And if you were the first to see them, how much could change? If this story touched you, don't let it fade away. Hit subscribe and share it with Beat Stories. Each week, we bring you stories where the extraordinary hides inside the ordinary.